Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. We've got a loaded show for y'all tonight, full of football, all kinds of NFL talk. I'm sure all of you on the East Coast, it's pretty much dark where you're at. The whole time change and all that. We get an hour, but the night comes quicker. It's crazy. But hey, listen. Gotten used to it for a week. It still feels a little weird. It's freezing where I'm at in Tennessee. Hopefully not so much where you're at, wherever you are in the country or in the world. So lots to talk about. I'm going to lead off the show talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and why I think, folks, they're back. Like back. As well as the Seahawks lost the Packers. I'm going to talk about both teams and kind of where they're at this stage in the season in 2021 and beyond. As well as my Dallas Cowboys and my quarterback dominating the Atlanta Falcons yesterday. I'll talk about that. The Patriots equally dominating the Cleveland Browns yesterday in Foxborough. And at the end of the show, I'll predict the 49ers and the Rams Monday Night Football, which will be OBJ's Rams debut. But first, let's talk about that Chiefs-Raiders Sunday night game last night. And I had Chiefs close. I didn't have them covering the spread. They were actually road favorites, -2.5. I think a lot contributed to that. Kansas City on a 2-game winning streak. Raiders lost a road game in New York. I'll talk about the Raiders briefly before I get to my main point about the Chiefs. For the Raiders, I think, and Collinsworth and Chris Collinsworth, Al Michaels, they both talked about it toward the tail end of the game last night. Maybe all of the off-field stuff has just been too much for the Las Vegas Raiders. And if so, totally understandable. I mean, if you would have told me the Raiders going into this season that we're going to hit mid-November, we're going to be a week and a half away from Thanksgiving, that the Raiders are going to have to, he resigned, he got fired, okay? They had to fire their head coach because of an email scandal of him sending just disgusting language towards his buddies that at the time worked for the Washington football team. So they had to fire him, replace him with a special teams coach, a good special teams coach in Rich Bisaccia, but he's never been a coach at any level of football. Okay, so you got that. You got Arnett, who was their first-round pick recently in 2021 this year, who gets cut because he's on, I think, IG Live or something, wielding weapons and making death threats. It's like, what the heck's going on? Then you got the Henry Ruggs tragic situation where he's drunk, driving, and kills a poor woman and her dog, and they had to release him. It's like, man, that's a lot. And to their credit, they're 5-4. They're still very much in the playoff chase. Give them credit where it's due. Last night was abysmal, no question about it. And I thought they were going to make it closer than what it ultimately ended up being. But to Kansas City now. And look, I've been about as big of a Chiefs critic as anybody out there. A month ago, heck, 3 weeks ago, I said, folks, this is an average football team. I mean, what when I watched the Chiefs play, what did they do really well? Nothing at the time. Pat Mahomes was turning the ball over. Receivers struggled to go open. The defense was garbage at best. At best. Special teams struggled. I mean, you hear the old coach cliche, complimentary football. They weren't playing complimentary football. Offense was bad. Defense was bad. Special teams never really got put in opportunities to succeed. It was horrible. 3 weeks ago, the sky was falling after a 27-3 beating at the hands of the Tennessee Titans, who, without their best player, had the best record in the AFC and are tied for the best record in the NFL. Go figure. Talk about Tennessee and some of the other NFL teams later. But 3 weeks later for Kansas City, a 3-game winning streak, first in the AFC West at 6-4, and heading into can't wait for this game, a massive Sunday afternoon game, the America's Game of the Week on Fox, Dallas, Kansas City. Boy, that'll be a fun one at Arrowhead Stadium. But they've turned their season around. And I said going into Sunday, I said it on Friday's show, and I predicted this game, this will be the game that Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs defense takes off. Because sometimes you need these momentum games, right? You're on the road, division rivalry, because the Chargers had lost earlier in the day to the Minnesota Vikings at home. The winner of that game last night was in sole possession of first place in the AFC West. And so Kansas City's like, everything, all the you-know-what has hit the fan thus far this season. and we could be in first place if we win tonight. Like, it's those little things, those boosts of confidence and I guess reinforcements in regards to what the Chargers kind of laying an egg defensively against Minnesota. That's what that was. And Pat Mahomes was unbelievable. 5 touchdown passes at a passer rating of 127. He was efficient. He was making Mahomes-like plays. But I'll tell you what I loved watching that game, and it's been something I've been yelling on the show for Pat Mahomes to do, is that guys are getting open down the field, yes, but sometimes you don't have to make what I sometimes call the greatest play of all time. You don't have to throw off your back foot 50 yards downfield and then Tyreek comes and gets it, or Hardman or Pringle. No, you can get the ball to your running backs or to Travis Kelce, who had a big game yesterday. Like, take advantage of the fact that you've got the best tight end in the National Football League in Travis Kelce, who last night was outstanding. 8 catches, 119 yards. He was excellent. Utilize him. It doesn't have to be deep balls all the time. And what you saw was a great game plan by Andy Reid and a focused Patrick Mahomes. Not to say he wasn't focused the last 2 weeks, but offensively, let's be honest, they looked off at best and discombobulated at worst. So that was a great win last night over not a great football team, but a good football team. And it's kind of funny, like, this second half of the NFL season, the haves and the have-nots are really starting to show themselves. The Raiders, what do we know what they do in the second half of seasons? They collapse. They come out this season, they look like, playoff contenders, and hey, they may even win a playoff game. Who knows? They may get to the AFC Championship game, and in the second half, it's like, wait, where'd the Raiders go? Maybe that was a John Gruden problem. This season, I think it's a off-the-field distraction problem. And then for the Chiefs, Andy Reid's probably still the best offensive coach in football, and Patrick Mahomes at his best. I can't say I'd take any quarterback over him. At his best. Not all the time, but at his best. Can't say there's that many quarterbacks I'd take over number 15 in Kansas City. So, great win by the Chiefs last night. And as a Cowboys fan, heck, throw that out the window. As an NFL fan, I can't wait. I can't wait for Sunday afternoon's game between Dallas and Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. I can't imagine the rating it'll get. It'll be awesome. 2 high-powered offenses, 2 defenses that are playing well as of late. Can't wait. All right, let's move on to a team that has dominated the AFC for 2 decades. That would be the New England Patriots, who absolutely, in every way, shape, and form, kicked the Browns you-know-what. 45-7. And there's a couple takeaways I got on this. Number 1, let's start with the New England Patriots. They build a rhythm here. Most of their wins have been, cool, you beat the Jets twice. You had to come back to beat Houston and the Chargers. Justin Herbert played poorly. Last night at home, albeit, listen, they've struggled at home against what is a great Browns roster. They were outstanding. Defensively, listen, I've talked about them all year defensively. They're no joke. Matthew Judon might have been the best free agent signing of the year. And Bill Belichick, in the draft and in free agency, well, more in the draft, but even in free agency, he's made some moves, some signings like, dang, what are you doing? Like, where are you going with that? But he's made some moves like Darrelle Revis or Randy Moss. Like, wow, that worked. And Matthew Judon, not say he's the level of Darrelle Revis, who's a future first ballot Hall of Famer, or Randy Moss, who is now a Hall of Famer, but hey, he can play. He's wreaking havoc. And as for the offense, listen, I've not been a big Mac Jones guy. I still think he's going to be an average quarterback, but he played well yesterday. The Patriots offensive coaches, Josh McDaniels, they put him in good positions to succeed, and he was outstanding. 19 for 23, $198, and 3 touchdowns, and a quarterback rating, a passer rating of 142, nearly perfect. Got to give credit where credit's due. I keep it real here on Carving It Up. He was outstanding. And I don't think the Patriots are Super Bowl contenders. Pump the brakes, Boston. Please. So stop talking about this is the continuation of the dynasty. Ain't no dynasty without number 12 there. Let's ain't no dynasty without Tom Brady. We all know that. Even the way he played yesterday, there's no dynasty without Tom Brady. But let me move to Cleveland, because this is something that I've said for a long time on Carving It Up, that you can have the roster. You can have the coach. You can have good people running your organization, which the Browns, for the first time in forever, finally do. But if you don't have the quarterback, there's only so far you can go. And it reared its ugly head yesterday. But I guess Baker Mayfield apologized. I guess that was Odell's fault, right? Like Odell, because he didn't show up to practice, like that. That wasn't his. That was his fault. The reason Baker struggled. Baker Mayfield got hurt in that game yesterday. In Case Keenum, on 9 fewer attempts, threw for more yards. Baker Mayfield, 11 for 21, 73 yards, a touchdown, and interception, a QBR of 32, a passer rating of 56. He's not that guy, folks. He's not. The Browns need to look themselves in the mirror and say, folks, we've got it. Myles Garrett might be the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. We've got other playmakers defensively. Offensively, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Austin Hooper. We have a top 3 or 4 offensive line in the NFL. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt when he gets back. Dearness Johnson, their third-string running back, could start for multiple teams. We've got, by the way, our coach, all he did last year in his rookie season was win Coach of the Year. We've got everything you need. We just need one more piece. We need a franchise quarterback. I'm not saying Baker Mayfield is a backup. He's not. He's a starter. But what's his career record? 27-27. He's average. That's what he is. And average quarterbacks don't win Super Bowls. Barry Grant Jr., my man, All Even Podcast. It's amazing when they won last week. Injuries were not discussed. But this week, he's hurt. Very interesting you bring that up, Barry. A lot of teams had injuries yesterday. A lot of teams. Hey, I'll talk about the Cowboys in about 5 to 10 minutes. Cowboys missing Tyron Smith, who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer one day. They missed him. Right? They missed both pass rushers, DeMarcus Lawrence and Randy Gregory now. Heck, they missed Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup's played one game, which was week 1 against Tampa. He finally came back yesterday and played pretty well. Dallas had all kinds of injuries. But they've got a franchise quarterback. They've got an elite quarterback in Dak Prescott. The Baltimore Ravens. Every single running back got hurt for them. They had to bring Le'Veon Bell off his couch. They had to get Devontae Freeman off his couch. Their number 1 corner, Marcus Peters, went down. So no discussion in Baltimore. Why? Because they have a franchise quarterback. That's why. Because if you have that guy, not saying you have to win a Super Bowl, but can he mask your deficiencies? And Baker can't do that. It's got to be perfect. This is why I said when there was the whole Odell controversy, I was like, this is an Odell thing. It's a running game thing. If the Browns run for 100 yards, they win. If they don't, they lose. They didn't run for 100 yards yesterday, albeit they fell 1 yard short. Dearness Johnson had 99 yards rushing. But that's the story for the Browns. And that's Baker Mayfield. There's only so far he can take you. Case Keenum is the same guy. Baker might be a hair better, but hey, Case Keenum got to an NFC championship game. Can Baker win 2 playoff games, please? He's not that guy. And when you look in that division, ladies and gentlemen, Baltimore's got their guy, Lamar Jackson. Cincinnati's got their guy, Joe Burrow. Pittsburgh, do you see that Pittsburgh Lions game? I don't even want to, I'm trying to erase that from my memory as we speak. But Big Ben's done after this year, and being the great first-class organization they are, they'll find a new quarterback, whether it's the draft, whether it's free agency, whether it's through a trade. They'll find a new guy. The Browns are literally... Can you imagine if they had Justin Herbert? How good they'd be? Or if they had a Joe Burrow? They're that close. They just don't have a quarterback. I'm not saying... Heck, I don't know if you would have thrown Patrick Mahomes on the Browns yesterday, they would have won that game. The way New England's defense was playing, I can't really think of a quarterback that would have won that game. But it wouldn't have been an embarrassment. They've got the coach. I mean, look at their opening drive. Cleveland scored in their opening drive. They look great. That's a sign of a great coach. Kevin Stefanski, excellent. Coach of the year last year. They've drafted very well. They've totally rebuilt that offensive line in like a year, 2 years. The defense, which was okay last year, is great this year. They got the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. The guy picked to win Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. And so the Browns got to look at themselves in the mirror. Say, we can't deal with this forever. Like there's this discussion, are the Browns going to pay Baker Mayfield? If they are, I've said it once, actually I've said it multiple times, but I'll say it again. If they sign Baker Mayfield to a long-term contract, especially if the money is in the ballpark of a Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, even Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson money, they are literally committing organizational suicide. Because you got it. And you want to, listen, also if you pay Baker, here's why it would be terrible, because you wouldn't be able to pay guys, some of your rookies that you've drafted the last few years and have been excellent players. You won't be able to pay them. You won't be able to keep them. The best way for the Browns to go, draft a quarterback. Draft a rookie quarterback that you trust. Now, the tough thing is next year's draft classes, and there's a guy from Liberty that's decent. The Kenny Pickett guy from Pittsburgh, I kind of like. I like what he brings to the table. Does Cleveland make a move on him? Who knows? But what we do know is that, man, there's only so far you can go in this league without a franchise quarterback. I mean, look at the Denver Broncos. You know, last week against Dallas, Teddy Bridgewater looked like a Pro Bowler. Yesterday against Philly, he didn't make a tackle on a fumble recovery by Darius Slay. It's like, yeah, Teddy's good, but you never know with Teddy. He's not that guy. And Baker's not that guy. And the sooner the Browns come to that realization, the better. Barry is a good general manager. Stefanski is a really good head coach. And they've got a well-put-together roster. I have major questions about their owner, Haslam, but that's for another day. But this is, after this season, look, the Browns are probably going to make the playoffs. I mean, you know, you look at their schedule, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to beat Detroit next week, okay? Baltimore, I think they'll split with Baltimore. That's their next two games. The Raiders are in a free fall right now. They won't beat Green Bay. And then they got a road game at Pittsburgh. Look, the way Pittsburgh looked yesterday, I could see Cleveland beating the Steelers. And then they got the Bengals. Browns could very, very well make the playoffs, and I think they will. But after this season, whenever their end of the season is, they got to have a come to Jesus moment. That he's not it. We need to move on. He's got the 5th-year option. You can trade him. Somebody will take him. Hey, you know, Detroit might take him. Some of these teams that are desperate, they'll take him. But Baker can get you to the playoffs. That is if everything is going perfectly. But think about last year. They play in Kansas City in the playoffs. They get the break of breaks. Patrick Mahomes goes down in the third quarter. And so it's on a silver platter for Cleveland. Heck, Chad Henne, who comes in, throws a terrible end zone interception in the fourth quarter. It's like, Baker, win the game. The proverbial football gods are saying, Baker, here you go. And he can't do it. He's not that guy. Average arm, not horribly accurate these days, immobile. His leadership skills are questionable at best. He's still, even in his 4th year in the league, he's kind of immature. He takes shots at some of the medical staff and takes shots at other guys. Time to move on after this season, Cleveland. You'll be better off for it. All right, let's talk about an actual Super Bowl contender with an actual franchise quarterback who's not just a franchise quarterback. He's one of the best in the game. And the team I'm referring to, I won't say anything. I will let the Hall of Fame coach, Jimmy Johnson, lead me into this next segment.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
What better way to put it? How about them Cowboys? I had Dallas winning on Sunday. I did not have them winning by 40. Nobody out there had them winning by 40. If so, you won a lot of money. if you're somebody that bets on games, because man, from the jump, that was a different Cowboys team than we saw last week. And it's just like Dak Prescott said after the game. Last week, using Dak Prescott's words, last week was not us. Every team, now that Arizona, you saw Arizona played against Carolina. Now every elite team, every Super Bowl contending team has had a bad game. Every single one now. Arizona got clobbered by Carolina yesterday. Dallas got clobbered at home by Denver. The Rams have had two stinkers, one against Arizona and two against Tennessee. Now, those are two good teams, Super Bowl contending teams, but neither of those games were even competitive. The Packers got embarrassed in week 1 by the Saints. You look out in the AFC, the Titans got embarrassed. They're not embarrassed, but they lost to the Jets. The Bills lost to the Jaguars. So, I mean, even a playoff team like the New England Patriots, a playoff contending team, they had to come back on the Texans. Every great team or even good team has had a bad game this season. They have. Dallas had a bad game last week. Dak was poor. He looked rusty. And at the end of the day, he didn't look great. Plain and simple, he didn't play well at all last week. He got the couple touchdown passes in garbage time, but those meant absolutely nothing. They're the kind of I always call it like the cotton candy of yards and points, because you eat them, but they don't really fill you up and they don't really give you anything, right? That's what the Cowboys did in the fourth quarter last week. But today, it was a different energy. Okay, it was the defense was outstanding. Got 3 turnovers off Matt Ryan. You had Dak, who was, dropping dimes to CeeDee Lamb and Gallup and Cooper. And, Dak was on the money yesterday. Almost threw for 300 yards, couple touchdown passes, and ran for a touchdown. This Cowboys team, folks, is the best team in the NFC. You heard it here first. Green Bay, I have major questions about their quarterback in the postseason. Look at the numbers. Look at his record. You don't get the same Aaron Rodgers in the postseason that you do in the regular season. The Rams, we'll see. Stafford is yet to win a playoff game. You look at the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray's never played in a playoff game. Okay, you look at you look at other teams like, obviously the Saints aren't contenders, but Barry just put in here in the comments. He said, it must have been the monkey butt powder McCarthy handed out all week. He's nuts. He's crazy, man. Mike McCarthy is not a natural motivator. Let's put it that way. We saw Hard Knocks. It's not exactly in his DNA, but I will give Mike McCarthy this. And I've been as critical as anybody. His time management has been awful. Decision-making at times has been equally awful. But here's what Mike McCarthy has that Jason Garrett never had. In 10 years, Jason Garrett never had this. Mike McCarthy, whether it's through, I can't even say it with a straight face, monkey butt powder, as was reported by Bleacher Report, whether it's, smashing watermelons, I don't know what that was for last year against the Vikings. Through any means necessary, Mike McCarthy has the Cowboys ready to play. Think about all those years with Jason Garrett. They be in a big game, big divisional game against Philly or Washington or the Giants, or a big, a game against the Packers, or again, and they come out flat, penalties, turnovers, long plays given up by the defense. It's like, oh, here we go again. This is one of them Sundays, right? Again, the Cowboys have had one bad game, which, like I said, everybody this season has had a bad game. Now, I don't know what decisions Mike McCarthy makes in the game. Kellen Moore calls the offensive plays, which obviously is, as we all know, Kellen Moore, at this point in time is the best offensive coordinator in football. Dan Quinn, by the way, shout out to Dan Quinn, man, getting the game ball after the game. Obviously, the Falcons were his former team. He coached them for, 5.5 years before he was fired last year. Obviously, led him to that Super Bowl, the infamous choke against New England, 28-3. But Dan Quinn, against his old team, defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, gives up a grand total of 3 points. I mean, Atlanta flew down to Dallas just to kick a field goal, basically. That's what it was. That's how good Dan Quinn's defense was yesterday. John Bones Fossil, block punt yesterday. I read this stat the other day. I think it said, the Cowboys this season alone have blocked 3 punts. In Jason Garrett's tenure as the Cowboys coach, which was 9.5, 10 years, they blocked 1. Some of that's special teams coaching. Some of that's Jason Garrett. There's a different vibe of this team. There's a different feel to this team than past Cowboys teams. Like you heard Dak say in the press conference, that wasn't us last week. And whether it's with monkey butt powder, I don't know what he's going to use this week against Kansas City. Who knows? But Mike McCarthy has this team ready to play week to week to week. His decision-making may be questionable. And I've ripped him on this show multiple times for that. But I have not one time outside of Denver said, boy, that team wasn't ready to play. Even the other loss to Tampa Bay. Dallas came out the gates, great energy. I mean, heck, it took Tom Brady doing Tom Brady things, leading the Bucs down the field for a Ryan Suckup game-winning field goal to beat the Cowboys in week 1. At home, have you? So I love this team. I think this team is absolutely the favorite in the NFC right now. I mean, Tampa Bay lost to Washington, lost to Taylor Heineke. Green Bay, I'm literally about to talk about Green Bay. Offensively, there's something off there. You look at the Rams. Frankly, I trust the Rams, I trust the Cowboys more than I do the Rams. I love Stafford. Stafford's been excellent in LA, but who do you trust, Matthew Stafford or Dak Prescott? I'm going to take the guy who's won a playoff game. The Cardinals, they haven't been to the playoffs since 2015, and obviously their quarterback, Kyler Murray, who's phenomenal, hasn't been to the playoffs in his career, obviously, his very young career. So among the contenders, Dallas is the one I trust the most, which it's weird to say that considering they haven't won a Super Bowl in a quarter century. But that's what they're at right now. So I think I would be shocked, if not stunned, if Dallas lost 3 more games the rest of the year. Like if they lose to Kansas City Sunday, okay, Kansas City's at home, they're on fire. I get it. Even the Saints, I'd say the Saints would be the second most possible loss, right? Like the Saints, they're at home. That's Sean Payton. That's still a hard place to win. It's not the same energy as when Drew Brees was there, but that's still a tough place to go and win an NFL football game, especially at night, which that will be a Thursday night game. And Arizona as well. But after that, you got a bunch of Raiders and Washington football team twice, and the Giants and the Eagles, who were playing well, but Dallas is clearly better than Philly. We saw that week 3. This is a different team than years past. This is a different team than the Jason Garrett or the Wade Phillip-led ones. So I feel very confident about my pick and about my bet with you, Barry, about Dak Prescott in the first year of his new contract. You said he didn't deserve of getting to an NFC championship game in year 1 of that big, like Texas-sized contract. And I feel very confident about that bet, if not something greater. We will see what happens. But love the Cowboys right now. They're on a roll. Let's talk about 2 other NFC teams that are going in completely different directions, and that would be the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers. Now, let's talk about Green Bay first. So Aaron Rodgers obviously came back and was kind of off all game. I will make this. I will say this before I get into like the actual game. And Lord knows I'm no doctor. I've always talked about like when I've discussed like the pandemic and stuff and vaccines, like, man, don't take my medical advice. Don't take anybody who's not a doctor. Don't take their medical advice. Take the professionals. Okay. Learn from them. But I will say this though, from what I saw from the CBS shots that they showed of Aaron, his eyes looked kind of sagged. Like you go back and watch, his eyes looked a little sagged. I'm not saying he's got COVID. Obviously he passed the tests. Schefter, Rappaport, they all put that out. Yeah, he's passed the test. He's asymptomatic. But his eyes looked a little bloodshot. His eyes were kind of sagged. He looks a little fatigued, a little tired. Didn't really look like himself. And look, as someone who's had COVID, that's kind of what happened to me. I was tired, didn't have a ton of energy. And so that's something the Packers, hopefully not for long, because we wish, obviously, health, we wish the best to everybody, including Aaron Rodgers. But this could be something the Packers would have to deal with for the next couple of weeks. Like, Aaron looked off. He made a terrible red zone interception to Jamal Adams, who does not intercept passes, even as a safety. He's more of a linebacker than he is a safety, if we're being honest. But threw an awful red zone interception. Thankfully, Russell Wilson was worse than Aaron Rodgers, and that was ultimately the difference in the game. But Aaron was 23 of 37, 292, an interception, a passer rating of 75, and a QBR of 29. So he was shaky all day. But ultimately, it was the Packers defense that got the win for them. Like, that defense, I'll tell you what's scary about them is that, A, it's the best Packers defense since that Super Bowl winning season in 2010, which is really good news for Packers fans and for Aaron Rodgers. Because, hasn't that been what he's begged for and what Packers fans have begged for? Like, man, just give this guy defense and we can go win a Super Bowl. Well, you got the defense now. We'll see. But you look at Zadarius Smith is out right now. Arguably the best or second best corner in football. Jair Alexander's out right now. So those two will be back to bolster that defense even more. You got to give a lot of credit to the Packers, in their personnel and what they've done, because that defense is no joke. And they've given a lot of teams issues. Are we sure that Kansas City wouldn't have taken off last week against a lot of average defenses? And that the Packers defense just made them look average, at least last week? Because Patrick Mahomes was average last week. So was Travis Kelce dropping passes. And then, yesterday against the Raiders, Kansas City looked unstoppable. And so for the Packers, defensively, big thumbs up, because y'all go in the right direction. And so we'll see what happens the rest of the season. The Packers are obviously 8-2. As it stands right now, folks, the Packers would have home field advantage in the playoffs. They get a bye in the divisional round, and they'd host a game at Lambeau Field. My sister is obviously very pleased about that. She's giving me a look from across the room. Hate the Packers. Anyways, but on to Seattle. And here's the issue with the Seattle Seahawks. And I've said this for weeks. And it may be controversial, but just look at the situation. It's time to move on from Pete Carroll. Now, I love Pete. Who doesn't love Pete? He's 70 years old. He's got the energy of a 30-year-old. I mean, he's chewing gum on the sidelines. He's all excited. Part of the issue, though, with Pete that's kind of caught up to the Seahawks, though, and it caught up to USC toward the end when he was there, a little too loose. Like, Seattle commits a lot of bad penalties, right? I mean, just yesterday, for penalties for the Seahawks, 5 crucial penalties in that game. And Russ was off. Listen, Russ is coming back from a finger injury. That's understandable. He hasn't played since, I think, week 5. He's rusty. It's been 5 weeks. He's probably still not 100%, but he's trying to give his team a chance to make the playoffs. I mean, I know Romo was saying, calling the game, like, Jeremy, I still think Seattle's a shot. I'm like, Tony, this is not a playoff team. As great as Russell is, that's about all they got. I mean, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are completely out of sync with their quarterbacks, whether it's Geno Smith or Russell Wilson back off an injury. This is a defense, and this is always when coaches get fired. When, if an offensive coach's offense is struggling, that's usually when he gets sent home, right? And for Pete Carroll, the Seattle Seahawks defense is ranked 31st, second to last in the whole NFL. Okay, if you want to keep Russell Wilson, if you want to keep him, it's time to move on from Pete Carroll. If not, Russ is going to leave, because the Seahawks aren't going to make the playoffs, so it's going to come down to one decision. Because Russ, last year, guys, Seattle won the division last year. They were 12-4 during the regular season. Yes, they went home in the playoffs with a loss to their division rival Rams, but they still had a fairly successful year last year. They were in the playoffs. They had a home game, won the tough NFC West. And still, Russell Wilson was kind of taking shots at the organization in an interview with Dan Patrick right after the Super Bowl. Heck, we saw Russell Wilson, who was last year's Walter Payton Man of the Year, right? He and his wife, Sierra, are sitting next to Roger Goodell in the press box watching Super Bowl 55 play out, and he's watching Tom Brady like, dang. So his organization wouldn't put the adequate talent around him. He left, and dang, Tom's about to win the Super Bowl. Maybe I should do the same. He gave the Seahawks a chance. It doesn't work. So it's either bring a new head coach in, or it's move on. Let Russ walk. You heard let Russ cook. Russ is going to walk out the door. And Russ loves Pete, and Pete loves Russ. It just doesn't work right now. You hear all the time about relationships that sometimes you're good for another person when you're with them, at the time you're with them, but eventually it's time to move on, and this is one of those circumstances and situations. Barry says, as a USC fan, I still haven't forgiven Carroll. He has worn out his time in Seattle. Great run, but the franchise must choose between Russ or Carroll. And that they will have, that's a decision they'll have to make in about 2 months or so. The Seahawks are not going to the playoffs. That's been established. They're 3-6. I mean, they would basically have to win out. And when you look at their schedule, it is not, it's not fun. There's some winnable games, yes, but you got the Cardinals at home next week with Kyler Murray possibly coming back. At Washington, I don't know if you saw Washington yesterday. They looked pretty good against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The 49ers at home, at the Texans, that's a win. At the Rams, you saw if the Rams did Seattle in Seattle, what they're going to do in the City of Angels. They host the Bears. The Bears defense is no joke. They host the Lions. That's a win. And then they go to Arizona. So I'm counting about, there's 2 games on that schedule that I'm like, yeah, Seattle will win. Houston and Detroit, like the 2 worst teams in the league. Outside of that, I'm not guaranteeing anything for Seattle. Like I said, poorly put together roster. A quarterback who, of the elite quarterbacks in the game, when you're talking about Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson has the least to work with by far. The offensive line has not been good in about 6 or 7 years. Now the running game. Also, something else about Pete Carroll, right? What's he always been known for? Great defenses, great running game. Both are terrible. The defense is ranked 31st. The running game has been abysmal this season. So like I said, and I talked about this with Kansas City when they were in their slump. What does Seattle do well? Nothing. They do nothing well. And usually teams that do nothing well, they usually don't go to the playoffs. Last I checked. You got to do something. You got to be good defense, or even a good group. They have a good linebacking group, or a good secondary, or a good receiving core. They don't have a good anything. So it's the Seahawks and the Seattle Seahawks organization's kind of got to have a come to Jesus moment, just like the Browns, like I talked about earlier in the show. Except the Browns is a totally different conversation. It's like we're a quarterback away. Like we got to move on from Baker. With the Seahawks, the quarterback's all they have. They're literally the exact opposite. The Browns got everything but the quarterback. The Seahawks have nothing except a quarterback. So, and a coach, by the way. So they don't have a coach. So move on from Pete Carroll. Do what the Giants did with Tom Coughlin, which, by the way, prayers out to Tom Coughlin and his wife right now. But let the Seahawks need to do what the Giants did with Tom Coughlin. You're technically firing him, but just out of respect, say Tom Coughlin is retiring or resigning from the New York Giants. Say the same thing about Pete Carroll. He's won you a Super Bowl. He gave you a lot of great years, made the playoffs every year but one. It's going to be 2 after this year. It was a good run. It was 12 years. It was fun. You had the 2 Super Bowls and the Beastquake, Marshawn Lynch, and the Legion of Boom. It was fun. I enjoyed watching the Seahawks. Everybody enjoyed watching Seattle. But it's over. If you want to keep Russell Wilson in the Pacific Northwest, the first thing you need to do is move on from Pete Carroll and hire a more modern head coach. Hey, Kellen Moore's going to be available. It hurts me to say that badly because I don't want Kellen Moore to go anywhere. But Kellen Moore's probably going to be available. Seattle, you interested? You're telling me if Kellen Moore's interested in the Seahawks, you're just going to say, nah, we're good with Pete Carroll. I don't know. I don't know about that. But that's what the Seahawks are. And look, the Packers, an argument can be made. They got the best defense in the NFC among the contenders. I mean, the Rams, yes, the Rams defense is excellent. You got Von Miller, who's making his Rams debut tonight. Aaron Donald is still the best defensive player in football. Jalen Ramsey's probably still the best corner. You got a good linebacking group and secondary. Like, the Rams are no joke. And the Cowboys got a good defense. I don't think it's as good as Green Bay's right now. The Cardinals' defense is not as good as Green Bay's right now. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at. But, man, the second half of the season, it's kind of, like I said earlier in the show, it's kind of the haves and have-nots are starting to show themselves, and that's usually what happens this part of the season. Is you got your teams that are like, okay, these teams are going to make a run for the Super Bowl. Like, we're going to see them at worst in the divisional round, and then you got the teams that are like, they could win a playoff game. Maybe they could upset somebody. And then the team's like, yeah, they got a ways to go. And that's kind of what we're seeing thus far in the first half of the NFL season. So it should be interesting. Before I get to my Rams 49ers pick, that's going to be an interesting one tonight. Let me go over some of the games I didn't talk about briefly, starting with the Saints and the Titans. I actually had the Saints in an upset. That was not the case. They fell short on a 2-point conversion. And look, this roster is really beat up right now. They lost Alvin Kamara before the game to I think is a thigh injury. So he wasn't able to go. Say what you want about Jameis Winston. He was starting to kind of fit well in the Saints program, the Saints offensive system led by Sean Payton. And, it's starting to show. Trevor Siemian's a good backup. He can win you a game or two. He can hang on and win a game at home against Tampa Bay, which he did 2 weeks ago. But do you trust him down 8 in the fourth quarter to come back on a great team like the Tennessee Titans? Not really. We saw that when he was in Denver, when he replaced, which he had the worst. He was in the worst position ever, replacing Peyton Manning in Denver. But he was good. He was good enough to win some games, but not enough to lift a team over the top, or a guy that you would trust late in these games when you're down the fourth quarter. And that was the difference. But listen, Tennessee, man, my biggest criticism of the Titans last year, I was like, I know they went 12-4. I know they won the division. I know Derrick Henry's probably the best offensive player in the league. But your defense isn't that good. Well, Mike Vrabel, what is he? A defensive coach. They have totally flipped. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. Their secondary is excellent. Like this Titans defense, especially the secondary, is lights out. And they can make the Super Bowl. They're 8-2. They can make the Super Bowl. They're going to win the AFC South. They're up 3 games on the Colts, and they own the tiebreaker over the Colts. They're really up 4 games if you think about it. And listen, this is a Super Bowl team. If you got a defense like they do, a quarterback who's beyond competent in Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, even without Derrick Henry, who they still may get back later in the season. They said the injury was like, I think, 8-week injury, 8 to 10 weeks. They could still get him back, and Adrian Peterson hasn't exactly been bad, for the Titans thus far. But this is a Super Bowl team, and the Saints, they'll probably be a playoff team, but that's about it. With Jameis, I feel like maybe they could win a playoff game. With Trevor Siemian, I'm not so sure. Even if they were to go out and get Phillip Rivers, which is still a possibility, I still don't know if this team wins a playoff game on the road, because that's where they'd be. Tampa's still going to win their division. I'll guess Tampa in just a second, but I don't think the Saints can win a playoff game. Colts played the Jaguars, sticking with a couple of their AFC South teams. That game was way closer than it should have been. The Colts got out to a big lead. Jonathan Taylor got off to an unbelievable start. He is. I've been the biggest Jonathan Taylor fan since he was at Wisconsin. I said last year at the draft in 2020, during quarantine, everything, we had nothing to talk about. I said, look, this Jonathan Taylor guy, he's going to be the best running back in the draft by far. And I think he's proven that. And quietly, an argument could be made that Jonathan Taylor's a top 5 running back. I mean, for real, look at the numbers. Albeit he's running behind a great offensive line, sure. But he can play. And he was excellent yesterday, 21 carries for 116 yards and a touchdown. He was great. Carson Wentz was making some pretty poor throws yesterday, some just out of control. And that's Carson Wentz. He and Sam Darnold are very similar, right? Big, somewhat mobile, big arm quarterbacks who just got to pull him in a little bit, like rein him in, like Stop making those bad throws. And Carson Wentz did that at times yesterday and had a passer rating of 78 and a QBR of 23. So, Wentz did not play well against a bad Jacksonville team. And as for Trevor Lawrence, he's still going through the growing pains of being a part of a bad roster. Give them time. If Urban Meyer can draft guys well, maybe this team can be a playoff team in a couple of years or so, but they've clearly still got a ways to go. But the Colts need to win that game by more than 6, at home especially. Browns, Patriots, already talked about that. Bills, Jets, I don't want to spend too much time on that. The Bills are a train wreck. The Jets are a train wreck. Robert Saleh, I might have been wrong on this guy. I don't know if he's the guy in New York. I liked him. I campaigned for him to get a shot last year. He finally did this year. It doesn't work. And maybe some of that's just the Jets are a bad franchise, which they are. I always call it the place where young quarterbacks' dreams go to die, and that's been the case with Zach Wilson in the games that he has started. But this is a bad organization. The Bills took advantage of that clearly. Lions, Steelers, golly. Probably the worst football game I've seen this year. First of all, let me just say this. I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, but I want to establish it. I want to be clear about this so I don't have to discuss it too awful much in the future. I hate ties. Hate them. I hate ties. I've always believed you got to have a winner. In baseball, you got a winner. You just go to extra innings and you play till one team scores more than the other. And in the NBA, you can have 5 overtimes if you need to. Just give me a winner. And yesterday, frankly, neither of those teams deserved to win. Detroit was terrible. Pittsburgh was terrible. At least Detroit knows they won't lose every game this season. Will they win a game? That's another story unto itself. But, geez. But here's this. Before I move on, I thought about it after that game ended and okay, how do you fix the tie issue? Because I don't think you start a second overtime. I don't think you go to a second overtime because that game would have lasted forever. I mean, neither team could. I mean, even when they did get in field goal range, the kicks were terrible. Both quarterbacks were off, albeit it was in horrible conditions. It was pouring rain in Pittsburgh. It was just miserable weather. But here's my proposal, and I know college football did something similar to this. If you get to the end of the 10-minute overtime period, and the game is still tied, obviously, how about this? You do what college football does, and you just do a 2-point conversion contest. So you do a coin flip, and say Pittsburgh wins the toss. Pittsburgh goes for a 2-point conversion. If they get it, they're up 2, and now the Lions have an opportunity to either tie. If they can't tie, the game's over, Pittsburgh wins, and vice versa. That's how you can fix the tie issue. I mean, Najee Harris, the running back for the Steelers, said, I didn't even know there were ties in the NFL. Which, obviously, playing in Alabama, you weren't exactly in too many close games, obviously. But that's my solution. A 2-point conversion contest if the game is still tied after the first overtime period. That simple. NFL, get to it. Competition committee, get to it in March or April, whenever they meet. Buccaneers in Washington was probably the most confusing game I saw yesterday. Tampa Bay, who I had by 10, lost by 10 off of a bye, which was stunning. Because the Buccaneers last year, they're 7-5. You don't really know, can this team win a Super Bowl even if they do have the GOAT? They go into that bye week after that loss to Kansas City, and they literally don't lose another game the rest of the year. They go 8-0. They win their last 4 regular season games. Of course, they beat Washington, New Orleans, Green Bay, and Kansas City to win the Super Bowl. And yesterday was not impressive at all. I mean, really quite the contrary. Brady wasn't great. The defense, once again, was disappointing. I mean, that's the thing that was some people. I mean, there were people out there who said we should give the defense more credit than Brady for that Super Bowl last year. And I disagree. I don't think they're even in that position without Brady, but I can see where they're coming from. I mean, that defense was lights out last year. Turnovers and big plays when they absolutely needed them. This year, it's been the complete opposite. They've been terrible. And so it was stunning to watch that last Washington drive where, I mean, Tampa Bay, Brady hits Mike Evans on the touchdown with 10:55 left in the fourth quarter. Did anybody in the world watching that game when Tampa scored that touchdown to cut it to to 23-19 after the missed extra point. Did anybody think, yeah, the next time Tampa Bay gets the ball is going to be with 29 seconds left? After scoring with 10 minutes left, they didn't get the ball until there was 29 seconds left because Washington had a 19-play, 80-yard drive that took 10 and a half minutes off the clock. Taylor Heineke, give him credit. I like the kid. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback, but he plays hard. He seems like he's got good leadership skills. The team seems to like him. And, hey, credits to Washington. Thank you, Washington, actually. Even as a Cowboys fan, it feels weird saying that. But thank you, Washington, because now the Cowboys jump the Buccaneers in the standings. So thank you very much, Washington football team, even though I can't stand you guys. And that'll never change. Let's talk about the Panthers and Cardinals. Once again, the Cardinals missed Kyler Murray. I said on Friday's show, regardless if he played or not, I didn't think it would matter. I was dead wrong about that. Panthers played, and Cam Newton was back. He let you know about it. He scored that touchdown. Obviously, he yelled, I'm back, I'm back. And it was a cool moment. I even put on my Instagram, I said, I'm not going to lie, this hyped me up a little bit. And, Cam, his first 2 plays back in Carolina, 2 touchdowns. He ran for 1 and threw for 1. And according to Ian Rappaport, Cam Newton's going to start next week against the Washington football team and his old coach, Ron Rivera. It's crazy. These things just seem to happen in the NFL, right? It just comes full circle. So it's really cool. And I was really happy for Cam. He realized the mistake he made. He got vaccinated. He stayed ready. The Panthers said, hey, our quarterback is A, terrible, and B, is hurt. So we still feel like we can make a push to get to the playoffs, which, hey, if the season ended today, Carolina would very much be in the playoffs as we speak, as I think the last team in, the 7 seed. But props to Cam Newton. He stayed ready. He stayed prepared. And thus far, he's reaping the benefits. Panthers are 5-5. Again, they play next week at Washington. That's going to be a fun one. But good win for the Panthers. Vikings over the Chargers. Once again, Justin Herbert just a little off. Maybe he's in a little bit of a slump. He's in his second year. It happens. But give credit to Minnesota. They've lost a lot of close games this year to Arizona, to Dallas, to Baltimore. They needed this one to give them to keep in the running for a playoff spot. They played well. Kirk Cousins was excellent. 294 yards passing and a couple touchdowns, a passer rating of 109. Kirk did his thing. If it's not prime time, Kirk Cousins is really good. So props to the Vikings for a really impressive road win. Looking at Minnesota's schedule from here, though, it's tough. They got the Packers at home. Then they go to San Francisco, to Detroit, Steelers, Bears, Rams, Packers, Bears again. So they got like 3-4 games, and I'm like, I don't know if they can win, especially the primetime ones. Like, you can pretty much go ahead if you're a Vikings fan looking at the schedule. You can pretty much mark 1, 2, 3 of these as losses because Kirk is not good in primetime. His record says that. His numbers say that. He's not good under the bright lights. And then finally, the Eagles and the Broncos. Listen, I picked Philly to win this game because they played some close games against Tampa about a month ago, and then they played a close one against the Chargers last week. It took a game-winning field goal to beat them. And I'm like, Denver might come in feeling a little overconfident after that win in Dallas last week, maybe let their foot off the gas pedal. And then the Eagles, on the other hand, are like, hey, we still got a chance to make the playoffs, man. Don't keep our name out of that mix. And, every second or third week, Philly looks like a real football team. And so I don't know if Nick Sirianni is going to be that guy to lead them to the playoffs for the coming years. I'm not sold on Jalen Hurts, although I love the kid. I really do. I just don't know if he can lead the Eagles to or back to the promised land the way they got there, obviously, in 2017. But they look good yesterday. Darius Slay, big play Slay, he did his thing yesterday with that fumble recovery for a touchdown. I know there was a lot of discussion about Teddy Bridgewater not making the tackle on that play, kind of shades of Cam Newton in Super Bowl 50 a little bit, ironically, against the Broncos. But it was a good win by Philadelphia. They controlled that game. They were the better team from start to finish. And that's the way it is. All right, final game of Week 10. I cannot believe we're in Week 10 of the NFL season. You got the Los Angeles Rams. You got the San Francisco 49ers, a big division matchup tonight on Monday Night Football as it stands about an hour and a half before kickoff. the Rams on the road are 3.5-point favorites. And of course, Odell Beckham Jr. is making his Rams debut tonight. Von Miller is also making his Rams debut tonight. Von Miller is changing from number 58 to number 44, I'm pretty sure. And OBJ is going from number 13, which he's worn his whole career, to, if I'm not mistaken, number 5? Number 3, number 5, something like that. So it's crazy what's happened with the Rams the last few days. Because Friday, Odell's like, okay, he's going to come in there. He was a luxury, not a necessity. I've heard that term used a lot lately, but that's what he was. You're going to bring Odell in. You're going to work his way, work him into the Rams system. And all of a sudden, your number 2, Robert Woods, goes down with an ACL injury, and he's done for the year, unfortunately. And so we obviously wish the best to Robert Woods and his speedy recovery for him. So now it's Odell goes from possibly the 4 to the number 2 receiver. Because obviously Cooper Kupp's the one. He's having a ridiculously great season. Van Jefferson, though, he's better in the slot usually than he is on the outside. So you put Odell on the outside, and when was he signed? Thursday? So I hope he built a good rapport with Matthew Stafford, because, man, this is a big one for the Rams. I mean, they want to keep, obviously, in front in the NFC West with Arizona, and they want to make a statement win tonight against a division rival and to say, hey, NFL, these 2 guys we traded for, it's working. And so I think it will work certainly tonight. And I'll take the Los Angeles Rams to win this game 27-14. So they absolutely cover. Look, San Francisco's in a position right now. I don't think they know where they're at. They're kind of having a little bit of an identity crisis. Is Jimmy G our guy? Do we go to Trey Lance yet? Do we still think we're a playoff team? Is Kyle Shanahan on the hot seat? If Kyle Shanahan is, then is John Lynch, which, by the way, John Lynch should not get fired. I'm just going to go and say it right now. They'd be crazy to fire John Lynch. Kyle Shanahan? I'm not so sure, and I used to be a big Kyle Shanahan fan, but, man, he's had one great season, 2019, and it was a great one, man. They made the Super Bowl, but since then and even before then, a lot of losing seasons, a lot of last-place finishes. If Seattle doesn't finish last, it will obviously be San Francisco. And so I think there's a lot more questions than answers with the 49ers. Not the case with the Rams. The only question is, are they the favorites to win the NFC? That's a lot better question to ask than, can we maybe make the playoffs? And so with that said, I'll take the Rams to win this game 27-14 to make a big statement on Monday Night Football and get it done. Their record goes to 8-2, and they keep pace with the Cardinals, tied for first place in the NFC West. And so with that, that is all the time we have for tonight's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by, dropping comments in the comment section. As always, be sure to catch Carving It Up on Thursday, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter. It will not be a live show. I won't be able to go live. It'll be a pre-recorded show, but stop by. It's going to be a fun one. Going to talk about the Niners and Rams game tonight, as well as other storylines, probably around the NFL and the NBA most likely. So it's going to be fun. Be sure to stop by and subscribe on YouTube and like, comment, share. It helps the channel grow exponentially. And so have a great evening, everybody. See you on Thursday. God bless you all. Peace out.